Welcome one and all to another Roman history walks, and today I'm visiting the bridge abutment at Chester's Roman fort on the North Tyne river. The Roman remains here aren't on the Hadrian's wall path, so a short 15-minute detour is required just along the Tyne from the medieval Chollerford Bridge. A visit is highly recommended. It's a marvellous section of Hadrian's wall and the engineering here is quite magnificent. As you travel east along Hadrian's wall, along its 80-mile length, the bridge abutment is roughly in the central section in the North Tyne Valley. Immediately to the west is the Roman fort of Salernum, Cauldron Pool, also known as Chester's Roman fort today. The site is now in the care of English Heritage. The wealthy businessman and antiquarian of the 19th century, John Clayton, bought up the site and preserved it for future generations, saving it from further stone robbing. We have a traditional date of AD 122 for the start of Hadrian's Wall, but the legions would have had to have built the forts and mile castles and foundations for the wall before starting work on the bridge, which probably started in around AD 125 as a best guess. The North Tyne has moved westwards since the building of the Roman bridge, and this has left the abutment high and dry on the east side of the river. Depending on the level of the river and the amount of rain we've had, it can be quite difficult to see some of the excavations. The site was first investigated by Clayton's men in the 1860s, and then again a modern research team excavated and recorded in the 1980s.
Well, I was here to do some high shots and some video of the Chester's bridge abutment. Unfortunately, at the moment the water level is very high, so you can't see the lower piers, although you can see the leat and the tower and obviously Hadrian's Wall, which is always exposed. But at the moment the North Tyne is too high for me to do any filming. But anyway, it's a beautiful sunny day. I'm on my own and I'm enjoying the peace and quiet and the archaeology.
Hadrian's Wall was originally designed to be 10 Roman feet wide. However, shortly after construction, the Romans narrowed this wall down. At the bridge abutment, you can see the remains of the original foundations of this broad wall. You can also see they're on a slightly different alignment to the later narrow wall. This realignment was possibly because the Romans built the foundations before the fort and bridge were planned. Once they were under construction, the builders had to realign the wall to match up with the bridge and fort. At Chester's, there were two generations of bridges. The first one was a magnificent, although simple, stone bridge with 8 piers and possibly a tower at either end. This was a major building project, only undertaken by the best engineers in the Legion. The structure had to take all the worst elements of the Northumbrian weather that could be thrown at it, including flood events. These events are not just a modern phenomenon. This film, which I took on a slightly drier day, shows the entire section of the bridge abutment. Most of what you can see actually dates from the second bridge. Although many recycled stones are visible, the original pier can still be seen from Bridge 1, marked in red. This was incorporated into the later structure, and it's still possible to see it when the weather is dry enough. You can still see the dovetail joints, which would have been filled with lead and iron to hold it together. Sometime in the late 2nd century, the bridge was completely rebuilt. This may be after a catastrophic flood event, which also affected the bridge at Willeford. You can learn more about that in a previous video I made about that particular bridge. The newly built bridge also contained a ramp, which would have been used to take the Roman military way, built sometime after AD 160, across the river. The military way ran down from the west and passed through the centre of Chester's fort before exiting at the lesser east gate, heading to a ramp which is still visible towards the bridge. This road ran the entire length of Hadrian's Wall and supplied the forts and mile castles. On either side of the bridge, a tower was built. You can see the entrance door here to the south at the top of the picture, and this was connected to Hadrian's wall with a ramp running down and to the side and onto the bridge parapet. The blocks the bridge was constructed of would have been lifted into place using a crane or an A-frame. The slots in the stones are a Lewis hole, and these would have taken a metal scissor-like attachment. Once under pressure from the lifted weight, they would open up and hold the stone in place until it was manoeuvred into position. Once the stone was in position and the weight lifted off, the wedges inside the Lewis hole would simply have fallen away and they could have been retracted and used on the next stone. The north wing of the bridge abutment is quite often underwater, but if the weather is dry enough, a remarkable Roman sculpture can be found on the fifth course. By the magic of video, we can now drain the water away and actually look at the north wing as it is dry, although very muddy. The Romans were a superstitious bunch, and the Roman phallus was seen as a way of warding off the evil eye. It's no coincidence that the carvings on the north side of the bridge, which would have taken the full force of any weather event, so any little bit of assistance to stop the bridge being destroyed with a good luck symbol would be welcomed. Just to the side of the river and south of the bridge abutment, you can see a selection of Roman bridge stones which were dredged out of the river during the excavations in the 1860s. It's fascinating to walk between them and see all the different features, mouldings, Lewis holes and clamp holes that exist amongst them. And it's through this way we can slowly but surely draw and construct the bridge in our minds. The stones, for the most part, were built against each other without using cement, but lead clamps and iron dovetails were used in places to hold the bridge together. Small fragments of iron and lead can still be seen on the stones. The bridge parapet would have been richly decorated itself. We have the remains of one of the columns, which would have stood on the top of the bridge. Similar examples can be found elsewhere in the empire. This is the lower section of one of these columns. Unfortunately, we've lost the upper section, but it's still a remarkable survivor. In dry weather, you can also see the remains of some of the bridge stones surviving in the river. Unfortunately, I've never seen the river low enough to see the piers, which are supposed to still exist below the waterline. This dedication slab, now in Chester's Museum, is from a cavalry officer, Aelius Longinus. It's possible it was placed on the centre of the bridge and then collapsed into the river. This watercolour by H.B. Richardson, painted in the 1860s, now in Tyne and Weir museums, shows the excavation. The stone barrel-shaped object in the middle of the watercolour is now in Chester's Museum and may have been a capstan used to wind a crane. In the later Roman period, the south wing of the abutment was extended. You can see the cruder stonework towards the end of the south abutment as the camera pans round. Curiously, in the later Roman period, a water channel was cut straight through the tower and out the other side, heading south. This may have been a water channel to feed a watermill further down the North Tyne. The water ran through a hole cut in the north wall and through the south door of the tower. A new wooden floor was then constructed over the top of the channel. Some of the large channel slabs have been reused, some from a water tank which must have been recycled from elsewhere. The channel was then capped off with enormous slabs and possibly reburied as it went south. These later slabs on the top have been destroyed by tree root action over the centuries since. Subsequent excavations have removed the original Roman clay floor, leaving this void. In the 1980s, the walls were becoming rather unstable and the whole area was consolidated. The lintel, which was broken in the north side of the tower, was replaced and the whole structure made safe for visitors to come and look at. Welcome to the end of the video, and I hope you've really enjoyed watching this as much as I've enjoyed creating it. These creations are very much a labour of love, but if you'd like to help support my work, you can buy me a coffee in the link below. Always welcome. I'm indebted to great wall scholars, P. Bidwell, N. Holbrook and Nick Hodgson for the latest English Heritage report on the site. Without it, I couldn't have created this video.